So what I really want to cover with you guys very briefly though is this whole issue of how you go about building a good team for yourself when you're based here and you want a team for yourself over in the US. Now this is an absolutely crucial part of the 10-step process. I'm going to tell you why. Like, most of us take for granted the fact that when we get involved in real estate, that the people that we meet along the way actually form part of our team. Now, if we're investing here in Australia, because we've grown up here, what tends to happen is that we kind of just meet someone, we meet a good real estate agent, we kind of meet people organically, so we don't take the whole issue of networking quite as seriously. What you've got to do when you're going into the US market is actually actively build your team. Now, the reason it's crucial is because really these people are going to be our eyes and ears on the ground when we're back here sleeping in Australia. It's much easier to network in Australia, it's much easier to build contacts because culturally we understand how people operate, and it's much clearer for us to express our expectations. The other thing is, in Australia, because we understand how people operate, we're not actually worried about any cultural differences. But one of the things about the US is, in terms of even just the basic way that they do business, it can be very different to us. So we need to be across those differences. The property law in Australia is a lot more standardised across the country, whereas in the US we have to deal with the issue that even from state to state and city to city, there can be big differences in the way that we treat property. So one of the things that I want to flag for you guys is even on the issue of professionalism and service, there can be big differences. You know, one of the things that you may have heard of is that there are a lot of people withdrawing out of the US market purely because they can't get the level of service that they want or they need from their property managers, for example. The laws and processing for purchasing property are also very different. So even just the flow of paperwork and the steps that you need to follow to actually buy a property are very different to here in Australia. The other thing to bear in mind is that the level of regulation that exists in the US market is much lower than here in Australia. The result, though, unfortunately, is that there are a lot of unethical operators in the market. There are people who are very much out to make a quick buck and who haven't been around in the industry very long. So we just need to be mindful of all those things when we're going over there. Now, it really will pay off to really take the time and screen people properly when you're going into the US market. So when I say that, you almost want to treat everyone that turns up or that you meet or that you're actively seeking out as if they're coming to work on your payroll. So you want to also learn about the methods of doing business before diving in. And the way that you can accelerate that is by talking to people, getting on the phone, talking to real estate agents, talking to attorneys, talking to professionals, and getting a sense for, well, how do they do business? Now, you've got to understand that building your team is not just about covering your back. It's about making sure that you've got the right relationships in place so that moving forward, your property is going to be well managed. It's really easy to buy property. What's harder is coming up with all the strategies and processes that you need to look after that property into the future.